In early 2025, a plane touched down in Argentina. Out of the plane came an unexpected passenger, Minnie the Jaguar, so named for her 125-pound frame by school children in Argentina. Her location? The Jaguar Reintroduction Center in Ibarra National Park. There, teams from Rewilding Argentina are bringing native jaguars into Gran Chaco. But not just jaguars. Also, red and green macaws, giant river otters, and Darwin's rheas, all brought back to their natural habitats. This is the work of Kris Tompkins, who believes that we can reorient the world towards beauty, diversity, and wildness. She's been rewilding since the beginning, but her path wasn't linear. She was the CEO of Patagonia, the major outdoor apparel brand, for more than 20 years, before she retired and became one of the most successful conservationists in the world. Even when it's been hard, she's made big choices and taken big leaps of faith. I'm Alex Honnold, professional rock climber and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who help to solve today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries.
I'm Kris Tompkins, and I'm the co-founder and president of Tompkins Conservation. As a child, we grew up on our great-grandfather's ranch and lived in Venezuela for 3 years when we were quite small, and then came back to the United States, went back to the ranch. And I would say my understanding of the out of doors probably comes from being one of the hooligans in our family and spending most of the time outside. I met Yvon Chouinard when I was 15. I was in high school, and he was living out at a local beach where our family also had a place, and met him there. And by the time I was 18, I was working with him on my summers away from college. And when I graduated from college, I started working with him full time, and eventually it became Patagonia Company. I met Doug Tompkins through Yvon Chouinard, and we ran into each other in southern Argentina in 1990. We fell in love then and there, and that was it. When I met Doug, he had sold his portion of a spree company and was looking around for projects that he might take on. And a year and a half later, I moved down there and joined him. Well, once we started buying land in Chile, the reaction was one of suspicion, doubt, discomfort. As that grew, it became really more and more dangerous. I was not used to being disliked by a government and neighbors and so on. So scared, I don't know. Scared's a big word, but really uncomfortable, unsure, absolutely. Once we had parks open and the trails were built and people could come, all were welcome, those fears began to subside. I think our first milestone was getting Pumalín Park open and people visiting and falling in love with their own forests, 1 million acres of forest. When Doug died the afternoon of December 8th in 2015, we had 5 new national parks we were in the middle of donating. And so the remedy for clearly the deepest grief I will ever experience was the need to stand back up, dust myself off, and go to work.
So Kris, talk about that journey. How do you go from 53 years with the company Patagonia to your current work in conservation?
We started Patagonia when I was 23, 22 years old. And by the time I was 40, I was thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? I can be doing this for the rest of my life. And it seemed impossible to me that was the outcome. And so I was really troubled and searching, how can I leave, the best job of my life probably, but I needed to do something else. And then I ran into Doug Tompkins, who became my husband, and he wanted to get into conservation and wanted to do it in the Southern Cone, Chile and Argentina.
Had he not started his conservation efforts there when you guys met?
He was just on the cusp. We ran into each other down in Southern Argentina. We fell in love like that day. Not kidding. It was a little like that. He went to Chile and bought his first piece of property, and then The next year, I retired as CEO of Patagonia and moved to South Chile, to a roadless area.
I mean, I think it's an interesting question because I think for a lot of people, being the CEO of a well-loved, well-respected company would kind of be enough. It'd be like, oh, this is amazing, I've arrived. And it seems like you've arrived in multiple fields in multiple ways. When you decide to take a next step?
I was so young when we started Patagonia Company. And then by the time I'm 40, God, we were traveling everywhere. We thought we were extraordinary, working in Hong Kong and Paris. And we think, God, can life get any better than this? And then all of a sudden you realize, Christ, I'm only 40 years old. I can be doing this till I'm 70. And then all of a sudden I started to feel like I was going to suffocate in a job I loved. I mean, This was a company we created in our heads. Everything we were doing exactly the way we wanted to do it. I panicked and really felt like I want to do something big with my life. I want to do something great with my life. And it had nothing to do with Patagonia. I mean, most people think, how could you do this? I love Patagonia. I'm still at it. But I wanted something much bigger, I had no idea what it was. Just that I couldn't sit in that chair another 30 years or 20 years. And then when Doug and I re-met in southern Argentina, he was telling me he had the same kind of epiphany, if you will, that there was in his case, not mine, a crisis between having a company like Esprit and doing something that was now completely counter to what your internal ethos was. And that's when he left. And I didn't have that because Patagonia Company was very different.
With your values. And so how did he pivot to rewilding, like conservation, the way he did? Like, why not try to change the company or start a new company or something like that? Like,
he did try to change what was taking place in Esprit, the kind of products they were making and how would they be sold. And, there's a click in your life. And sometimes you don't see them coming, or you certainly don't know the efficacy of it. And he just got out and moved to South Chile, to a roadless area, and did not have a complete sense of how that was going to look. But he understood that if you become and really think about deep ecology, the idea that all life has intrinsic value, if you really believe that, then you have no choice but to follow that in some way that you can't possibly know how it's going to turn out. And that's where he was.
Talk about the idea of deep ecology and following that. I mean, how did he come to care about that? I mean, obviously he'd always been outdoor minded, he'd found in the North Face, found whatever, but at what point did he start to care more about, the lives of all creatures and, all life on Earth?
He started reading books a few years before he ever got out of Esprit. One of the authors, Arne Næss, who was a Norwegian philosopher, he was a Spinoza scholar, but he was a climber, he was a mountaineer, he was a rock climber.
That's why Doug liked him.
Yeah. And he started talking about what he called deep ecology, and depth as in the depth of your thinking, that it is not something that you can really take on superficially. And that is, as I just said, the understanding that all life has intrinsic value, that humans are not set apart from the rest of life. And ergo, your behavior and what you lean into is the lifting of all life, all sentient beings. And we don't know how rocks feel, but throw those in too.
and so how did that manifest for Doug and for you? I mean, as you start to become aware of those kinds of things, as you read about that, how do you, because in a lot of ways what you're describing for each of you is sort of a midlife crisis where you're very successful in a career and then you suddenly decide, I want to do something more meaningful, I'm pivoting.
Yeah,
Except
but what
that-
if it's not a crisis? What if it's something else? It's a midlife unfolding of the deepest part of what it means and should mean to be human.
Yeah, so talk about what you guys started and that journey.
Yeah, so Doug, 1990, I think it was, 1991, decided to move to South Chile, seriously, to a roadless area. I think he flew around with you in some of these areas.
I was going to ask, no, so I visited him the one time.
I remember that. I was up here, I think.
Yeah, you were
missed
there.
You.
But do you remember where, I forget which park that was or like where?
Yeah,
I think it was your house, right?
You flew around.
Parque Pumalin, totally.
Yeah.
And then he toured me around all the, like, he was flying with his knees and taking pictures of all these mountains. I got so sick. Yeah, I got so sick.
Oh, you got sick?
Yeah, when we landed, I got out of the plane and puked in the bushes.
That's
I was
good.
like so sick because he was flying all around. Like, look at that mountain. And that one hasn't been climbed. And look at that one. He's taking all these pictures. And I was in the back just like, oh my God, I'm dying. Planes like listing side to side.
You're in a long list of famous people who have,
he was taking us somewhere nice to get lunch.
Flying with Doug.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, it was quite the experience.
I will say he was a brilliant pilot. I mean,
when he used his hands, when he's flying with his knees and he's taking pictures, I was like, oh man,
that's right.
It's not that stable.
When he got started, again, you have to place yourself in 1990, 91, and he's down there and he wants to do something, but it's not completely clear. And like you and most of the climbers, I'm from the climbing tribe. Most of you don't worry about how it's all going to work out. You just are very careful and serious about what you're doing. At this point in our lives, the risk was to have left everything, go to the extreme south of Chile, and not exactly know what you're going to do. And then a piece of property came up for sale. It's like small, 50,000 acres. And
is that small? That sounds really big.
It's really small. I mean, it became to be understood as being really small. Now we've donated 15 national parks and for a total of 15 million acres.
15 million acres.
Yes. Anyway, just starting at this one purchase and then bought another one, and now I'm living down with him full time. And we began to see that God, we can just seriously aggregate huge tracts of land, and then it came to us eventually, what if we just give it away? What if we just give it back to the country? We start working on the jewels of each country and give them back to the countries in the form of new national parks.
Did that feel like a new idea at the time? Because I feel like in some ways, Tompkins Conservation has become the model for that.
Yeah,
but maybe that's just in my lifetime.
But also the scale is much different. We were working on much larger scale in Chile and Argentina.
Because there was more opportunity, yeah.
Opportunity, and we were working with governments. So let's say in Pumalin, we put in, say, 500,000 acres. I donate it to you, and you kick in the fiscal land or the government land that's contiguous to it, and together we create 1 million acres of timber rainforest. So almost always, it's a partnership between the government and us.
Yeah, and so how much land now over what it's been, 35 years? You guys
33 years.
33 years. That's wow. How does that make you feel?
I'm 75 years old this year, Alex.
That's 33 years. And so how much land did you guys acquire versus put in partnership through the state?
Out of about a little over 15 million acres, I'd say we've put in around 2.5 million.
Oh, wow. And the rest was all contributed by the contiguous lands.
Yeah, it's like some of the big government land in North America.
Oh, wow. In some ways, that's almost more impressive that you guys managed to leverage 2.5 million acres into 15 million acres of protected parks.
Because here's why. Nobody, I don't care how much money you have, whom you know, it's impossible to save all the territories necessary, especially the ones that are in most danger or ecologically, they're the most important. Nobody can save all that land. Nobody. Just the
You're just saying the numbers are like it's too much land.
Yeah, it's too much land. But we would never be able to buy, just as the family foundation, 15 million acres. It would be very difficult to do that. We've invested over $400 million in conservation since we got started, since we left our day jobs. Yeah. And, it's not enough. I'm proud of what we've done, but you have to become really good at partnerships, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so so you've protected 15 national parks, 15 million acres. Where has it gone from there? I mean, talk about the emphasis on rewilding and sort of preserving whole ecosystems, if you can.
Right after Doug died, I insisted that the team in Chile and the team in Argentina become independent from Tompkins Conservation almost immediately. I mean, this was a month after Doug was dead. I went to them and said, we have to make you independent as fast as possible. And we'll fund you and so on, because I'm getting older every day. And I knew that for them to be as strong as possible, if I die, and I have a very strange lifestyle, I'm flying all the time in small planes and so on and so forth. That to me is the most important thing. I wanted a second generation. Now I'm pushing everybody, get the third generation lined up, because I want this to continue. I'm not so interested in looking backwards. I mean, I'm proud of it, but I don't really care. What matters to me is like today forward. So rewilding is led by the two countries, independent, and rewilding is looking at every project we work on and ask ourselves, who's missing? What's missing? And in the case of almost any project, you'll find things that you have to do to try to bring these large territories back to their fully functioning ecosystem. For example, Ibará National Park in northern Argentina. In that case, almost everybody was missing. Jaguars, giant anteaters, giant river otters, you name it, ocelots. Everybody was missing, really, since the early 1900s.
From what, like?
Well, really hunting.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just that simple, like case, human predation, like people have killed them all.
It's all human predation, yeah, exactly. Okay. So today, making this story very short, the jaguars, everybody's back. Now that's 25 years of work, but shorthand, everybody's back and functioning. So in both Chile and Argentina today, both teams, and I'm on the boards of both. I mean, I'm still working with them every day, but I can die this afternoon and I'm completely happy. We have been really successful at what we do, but somehow I think we have to think bigger and much more aggressively, much more impact. For every breath you take, it better have an impact someplace. So this is really
setting a high bar. I suddenly feel like I'm underperforming.
Yeah, you. Hard to imagine.
Well, but so go on. Like,
but you should with your own life. Am I having an impact?
Well, totally. I mean, so what's the next step of your?
So we're taking it out of just working within 15 million acres between the two countries, and both Chile and rewilding Chile and rewilding Argentina, expanding that into the continent. Because if you're not working at a continental basis, I completely believe, then you could find yourselves 50 years from now back trying to rewild the very species you're trying to rewild today. That's just how things are moving. So in the case of Argentina, and this is one of the reasons we're in New York this week, is announcing a completely new initiative between rewilding Argentina, On Safari in Brazil, the best team in Paraguay, and Nativa in Bolivia, to be working to reconnect Patagonia, the territory of Patagonia, back up to the southern border of the Amazon. And it's complicated, and in a podcast, it's really hard to describe without maps and stuff. But working in a way that jaguars can leave northern Argentina and get all the way up into the Pantanal and so on, and not just jaguars.
So like wildlife corridors on a massive scale.
But on a massive scale.
On a continental scale.
On a continental scale. And in Chile, same thing, but going up the Andes from deep Chile, where we work today, all the way up to northern Colombia. The work in Argentina for rewilding Argentina and also in Chile, rewilding Chile, all that inside their countries continues. But at the same time, you're expanding north out of your zone. So it's a sea change. But for me, I know what I'm doing until I drop dead.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. And it's as big and difficult as possible. And I think that's where I do my best work and it's like starting Patagonia. If you give me something and I'm able to start at zero, that's where I'm the happiest. And
like you want to be tackling a big project.
I want to be on something that feels slightly impossible.
You really should have been a climber.
I was, but as you know, well, I was a family climber.
I actually kind of want to take a step back for a second, just like you were saying, because this is a podcast and because people don't see maps unless they link to show notes. I think we'll have links to all the things that you're describing.
Yeah. Neither country is stopping. We're working on a big project down Cape Froward National Park. This is in Chile. It's down on the Straits of Magellan. It goes all along. Oh, I wish we had maps, but it has tremendous coastline, and it is absolutely wild. I mean, Alex, it's the wildest place I've ever been in.
Can you tell me about some of the successes that you've had with rewilding wildlife? I mean, and any specific species or anything?
There is this species called a rhea, a lesser rhea, and it looks like an ostrich, but it's smaller. It's not of the ostrich family. But anyway, that is the first binational translocation of working between Chile and Argentina to bring a species that was there, but in very low numbers. That's been extraordinarily successful. And the huemul deer, also in Chile, almost extinct, and now rewilding Chile has worked to stabilize the population. It's not necessarily growing yet, but it's not in collapse. So that's on the Chilean side. And there are many other species in Chile, but the highlights. And in Argentina, and bringing back the jaguar, ocelots, giant anteaters, giant river otters. A host of species in Argentina have been brought back, really having been gone for almost a century, or bringing back up species numbers who are really low.
And are those populations then stable once they've been sort of brought back? Are you seeing functioning ecosystems?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you see that, a lot of that. But again, in both Chile and Argentina, the reason that we're expanding in a continental scale in both countries is that's what these species need. Not all of them, but most of them have to have, because they need to be able to disperse. And if you keep looking at species reintroduction just within a national park, it would be a little like Yellowstone. You know, when the bison migrate south and they leave the confines of the borders of Yellowstone, they get shot every year in the fall. So you have to mitigate for that. So yeah, there are a lot of species that are back and thriving.
Can you tell me the impact that Rolex's Perpetual Planet Initiative has had on your work in South America? Yeah,
you know, we started working with Rolex several years ago, and it's amazing what they've done for Chile and for Argentina. Besides funding that they provided in both countries, there's a lot of support in terms of meeting new people, just seeing that conservation work, rewilding work is getting out there into audiences that we might not.
Like sort of elevating the work.
Yeah. No, Rolex is a tremendous partner for rewilding Chile and rewilding Argentina.
And has that actually helped sort of elevating the work like that? Has that helped find other partners or like make the projects more successful?
In a practical way.
Oh.
Our partnership with Rolex is extraordinary.
That's good to hear.
And it's fun, and they have great people. Yeah. So, and that matters. You know, if you're going to work with somebody or an entity long term, the people whom you engage with really matters a lot. And the team in Geneva is amazing.
It's an ecosystem. You need a whole thriving ecosystem.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And how do you maintain motivation for taking on bigger projects? I mean, you know, you're kind of touching on this from your personal pivot from being the CEO of Patagonia to running Tompkins Conservation and creating all these parks. But how do you, you know, at age 70, what did you say, 70?
75.
75. At age 75, how do you decide to take on an even bigger challenge?
I mean, that's what I love. I'm going to put the hammer down until I can't.
Or you can't hammer anymore.
Because I have no fear. You have to remember, for a few reasons, and certainly, number one, the day Doug died, first of all, I thought it was Yvonne. We were getting these broken calls. I thought Yvonne was dying or something had happened to him. And then, of course, I find out it's Doug. Anyway, I have no fear.
Even if there's nothing worse than that can...
Yeah, I mean, things have happened in my lifetime, all of which I'm grateful for, whether it's difficult or not. So for me to say, let's go for broke. Let's go do what it really takes to bring these species back, to save these rivers, to look at the earth as a participant instead of a factory. I have no limits.
Where does that deep love come from for nature? I mean, like, why put the effort in?
Because though I love many humans, and of course in the arts and music and philosophers and writers and climbers and what we humans are doing to ourselves, but to every other living thing on this planet, I don't want to be on that train. I want to be on the other team. You know, I had the chance to visit with Pope Francis in his library at the Vatican a few years ago, just the two of us.
Just
wow,
visiting. As one does.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was a great invitation.
Wow.
And Sophia Hinonen, who I've worked with for 25 years, she's the head of Argentina. Pope Francis was Argentine. So the genesis must have come from something there because we worked in Argentina for so long. And I tell you, Pope Francis was someone who really understands the mournful outcome of how we humans have decided to live and where we place ourselves in the scheme of life. And it's boring to talk about this. People roll their eyes. I don't care. I do not accept it.
What do you mean the mournful consequence?
You know, it's like Sir David Attenborough says, there are billions of people who are being affected by the way we largely Westerners live. And they're the very people who have no say, and they're the very people who can't get out of the way. So that's on the human side. And on the non-human side, you know this all very well. We are losing species so fast that the outcome is quite clear. So I I think the question isn't why do we do this? I think the real question is why isn't everybody doing it? We're not exceptional. We certainly shouldn't be exceptional. We should be commonplace today. I do a lot of public speaking, as do you. And I get asked a lot, well, what can I do? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's in a big theater and there's 1,000 people. And it could be someone young who stands up and says, I don't know, I want to do something. What can I do? I said, well, tell me what you're good at. What do you mean? Tell me something you're very good at. I can do this. Okay. If you're serious, you get up tomorrow morning, you go out and you will find groups, and I don't care if you're from a tiny village or you're from New York City. There are people who need done what you're good at. What you cannot do is get up tomorrow morning and decide to do nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm struck. I mean, I remember chatting with Doug, like the one time that I met Doug and briefly hung out with him. Yeah. I was really struck by the fact that he'd probably done more for conservation than almost anybody on Earth. And yet he was so deeply pessimistic. He was like such a curmudgeon in all the classic. Yeah. And I basically argued with him for a day and a half, I felt like, about environmental issues. And now listening to you, I'm sort of like, oh, it's like not that dissimilar. I was sort of like, it's interesting because, it's like, oh, that's a deeply pessimistic way of looking at the modern world. And yet you do so much and you're so motivated. I find that interesting because personally, I find myself more motivated for action when I'm feeling somewhat optimistic or hopeful, or, it's just easier to get up and do something when you feel good about it.
You haven't asked me if I have hope, but
that's
almost everyone.
Pretty sure you don't.
All right.
And I don't want to be
almost
sad.
Everybody on the planet asks me, oh, do you have hope? And I have come to think, and I say, the only reason you're asking me if I have hope is because you're hoping I do. Because I'm out there. I understand what's taking place. I have been in these trenches for so long. You don't deserve hope unless you're doing something to counteract the things you're worried about. Hope is action. You can't just be looking at somebody like me and hoping we're going to get all this right. This is a team sport. I'm, in the short term, this century, pessimistic. But I'm driven by pessimism. If I was optimistic, maybe I'd go to the beach more often, right? And it's not this black, sticky, oily pessimism. It's understanding what's taking place. Human suffering is unacceptable. The loss of forests is unacceptable. See it for what it is. Figure out what on earth, wherever you are, what you're going to do about it, and then get out of bed and go do it. I'm so amazed by my own life, what I've been able to do, and the people I love, and all of those things, that this is the gas in the tank for me.
I'm like, well, I feel like I need to go out and do something useful in the world, that's for sure.
But let me have my last say in this conversation. You are a reminder of what's possible. So don't forget that. Because you're not limitless, nor am I, but we seem to be comfortable in stretching the definition of what's possible. And you are like the poster child for that.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, from my perspective, everything I do feels very normal because that's what you do all the time. And that's, whereas I look at what you've done for the last, 30 years in conservation and whatever, 25 years before that, I'm sort of like, that to me is, the grass is always greener, basically.
Well, no, it's our version of normalcy.
Well, there you have it. That's our slightly more optimistic take. I mean, I think that you draw inspiration where you can, and you use that to do the best that you can to do something positive in the world.
That's right.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time and chatting, Kris.
Thanks, Alex.
It's a pleasure to see you. We'll put links to all of your work in the show notes. And thanks everyone for listening to Planet Visionaries, a Sony music entertainment production in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative.